High in the mountains of northern New Mexico, between Santa Fe and Taos, lies a most unique land. These are the villages held in the embrace of La Jicarita Mountain, small enclaves settled by Pueblo Indians and Spanish and Mexican explorers centuries ago. Today, the descendants of settlers, explorers, and indigenous people of southern Taos County live here in harmony with the traditions and customs passed down from generation to generation. A proud people whose roots are deep in the land they love and have a foothold in both the modern world and the history of their rich culture and heritage. These are the people of the Rio Lucio, Chamasaw, and many other small villages surrounding Peñasco, New Mexico.
Buenas tardes, good afternoon. My name is Sonya Romero, and the most important things in my life are these three things. Number one, my family. I am a mother first and foremost. I am the daughter of Tommy and Tila Romero. I am a sister. I am the niece of Bobby and Shirley Romero, and I'm also a very proud tia. Number two, my purpose. And I believe that I have many. I am a teacher. Soy una maestra de bilingüe. I am an activist. I am part of this human experience, so my purpose is deeply rooted in knowing that I serve others. Cesar Chavez once said, "We cannot seek achievement for ourselves and forget about the progress and prosperity for our community. Our ambitions must be broad enough to include the aspirations and needs of others, not just for their sake, but for our own." I have been a public school teacher for over 19 years. I've had the privilege and honor of teaching over 450 children. Who they are, where they come from, what language they speak, is what my teaching is rooted in. But in order for me to hear and honor the voices of my students, I had to know where I came from first, which brings me to my third priority. My history, y mi cultura, both of my past and of my present. I have a profound pride in my rich history and deep roots in my culture. The best advice I ever received was from my dad, who said that no matter where life took me or what successes I had, never to forget who I was or where I came from. And I never have. I come from the valley of Peñasco, where my family has lived for generations, to the beaches of Puerto Rico, where I grew up as a child, to the village of Jalapa, Mexico, where I continued a portion of my formal education, and of course, my beautiful Albuquerque that now serves as my home. It took me some time to fully understand the importance of these three things, but they are the seed of who I am. Let me tell you a little bit about me. I became a teacher because a teacher inspired me, and that teacher was my grandfather, Alfredo Romero. When I was a child living in Puerto Rico, my grandfather regularly sent me books, and I would read those books into a tape recorder to practice my English, and I would anxiously await his reply to see if I had read those books correctly. I still have the very first book he sent me, Dandelion by Don Freeman. I remember asking my first grade teacher in Puerto Rico, "Maestra, ¿qué es un dandelion?" As Spanish was how I mostly communicated. She had no idea what I was talking about. My grandfather, however, understood my Spanglish. One summer, when I came to visit him here in Peñasco, I said, "Grandpa, what is a dandelion?" While he could have laughed at me, instead he said, "Mijita, how did you know that's how we say dandelions in these parts?" His enthusiasm of my pronunciation made me feel special and valued, and I've never forgotten that. To this day, I still think of him when I see dandelions. I am told that my grandfather was like this with everyone. You see, teaching was his first love, and he was a brilliant man. He could read, write, and speak fluent English, Spanish, and Latin. He was an educator for over 40 years and was the first superintendent of the Peñasco Independent Schools during the famous Dixon case of 1948, which was the very first case to implement separation of church and state in public schools. My grandmother once told me that he had the opportunity to teach at a prestigious university, but chose to stay in his beloved community where he had lived all of his life to serve his people and to take care of his family. That example has been paramount in my life. Let me explain. You see, to me, my people implies not just my family, my community, and my students, but also my heritage. My heritage includes a family lineage that can be traced 12 generations to Calda de Reyes, Galicia, Spain. A heritage that has ties to crypto-Jews, a grandmother from the San Ildefonso Pueblo. It includes a delicious blend of sounds that combine both English and Spanish that make Spanglish. Foods that beg the question, red or green. And homemade cures by my grandmothers with all of the magical plants that Mother Earth has to offer, all of which are points of pride to me. I've come to understand that I cannot separate my heritage from my identity, because knowing my heritage means knowing my identity. And my identity is who I am, and I must remember that as I teach others to appreciate who they are. Look around you. Look at the person next to you. Look at this gorgeous valley around us. Look at all the colors. All of this is our collective heritage and our identities, and we are all rooted in the same heritage. My roots are deep, from my bisabuelo's general store in the late 1800s in Las Trampas, New Mexico, to the traditions of my grandfather, Maximiliano, that he learned during the Great Depression while working side by side with the Picuris Pueblo Indians so closely that Tewa was also spoken in their home. My names include Romero, Roybal, Mascareñas, and Rodarte. I have relatives with names like Demetria, Fares, Androla, Tranquilino, Floraida, and traditional names like Jose and Maria that have served as middle names for many of my tios and tias. Yet all of these names roll off my tongue. As they roll off my tongue, I am filled with great pride. You see, the roots of my heritage support many branches that do not just include my family, but also the successes of all of you and those before us, and now, my students. My job as a teacher, a mother, a member of our collective community, and a member of my family is to continue to harvest my and our heritage so that future generations can carry our legacies and our traditions. So I am going to ask you to all think deeply about what heritage and identity means to you, because everything around us grew from a hope that who we are, where we come from, would be forever remembered and carried proudly. Now let me share with you a little about how this has impacted who I am as a teacher and what is most important in my classroom, so that my students too can feel the pride that I feel. When I began teaching, I did so because I believed I had the potential to make an impact. For me, I knew from the very first day that I could make a difference, but I longed for a deeper understanding of my students to fully expand on their potential. But this would mean that I was going to have to build connections with my students, their families, their communities, and I was going to have to learn what mattered to them. I will tell you that as an educator, I have hundreds of stories and experiences that define my teaching, but I'm going to share one experience with you that is the stepping stone for where I am today. Several years ago, a very frightened kindergarten boy was dropped off in my classroom for the very first day. I didn't know anything about him or about his family. They did not show up for Meet the Teacher that day. On that very, very first day of kindergarten, he ran for the classroom door after his mother. My fear was that he was going to run into the busy streets of the downtown school that I teach. When I turned my back for just a second to reach for the door, he bit the back of my calf so deeply, skin was hanging everywhere, and there was blood everywhere. He was screaming in fear, and I spent the day in the emergency room. For the next year, I received a series of hepatitis shots, and I was tested for HIV for over a 2-year period due to the unknown nature of this bite and his unknown family history. What I didn't know at the time was that this child and his family had many struggles. Worse yet, his family had little access to support or even know how to get support. This 5-year-old little boy was on 5 different medications, and his mother could not read. I was asked if I wanted this little boy removed from my classroom, and I said no. We will figure this out together. I quickly learned that as an educator and part of my community is to advocate for the voiceless children and voiceless families. That was the moment that I truly understood that teaching is more than just academics. It's what teachers do. Many years have passed since this young man has left my kindergarten classroom, but I'm still very connected to this young man because I feel a profound connection to him as a human being. While I understand that his circumstances far exceed what I alone can fix, I will still advocate for him and his family as long as I can. What I learned from this is that our voices and our stories reflect our realities. They reflect what matters to us, and they need to be shared, your story and mine. Without hesitation, I volunteered to march in Washington, D.C. to rally with federal educators about saving our schools. I will march that same march again this July. That experience inspired me to become a teacher of teachers within my union, where I have the ability to support and collaborate wonderful educators in my profession. I still teach those classes today. That then led to my election as the Executive Vice President of the Albuquerque Teachers Federation, where I support many incredible professionals. I was also honored by the Ellen DeGeneres Show as an example of what teachers do in classrooms and what teachers do for children. My school was given $20,000 and received another $30,000 in donations. But I am not any exception to any rule. Look around you. Every one of you is here in this room because you all believe in something greater than yourselves. Most recently, I had the amazing opportunity to meet and have a conversation with President Barack Obama in Washington, D.C., and I was able to stand right next to him as he signed the Every Student Succeeds Act that will have positive possibilities for education nationwide. I have interviewed with national TV programs, newspapers in English and Spanish, and national blogs. But I'm most proud that I am a parent and a foster parent to 2 beautiful little girls that were once my students. All of that came from knowing that what I know matters, and I must lean into the world and advocate for all people. That example was shown to me by so many of you in this room. All of this has been an incredible honor. However, I've learned that an honor only becomes more than one moment when you do something bigger or beyond this moment, and that is true for everything we do in life. However, I do feel that this experience is not about me as a person, but rather us as a humanity. I have learned that the power of our collective voices, our stories, our histories, and solidarity in our purposes is what makes our stories most compelling. My biggest takeaway from all this is that our conversations about who we are, our histories, our families, and what matters to us must never stop with you or I. We know the realities of our world. We know our communities. We know our next generation. And we all must move together to higher ground to engage in conversations that will advocate for all. But we must begin with our most precious resources, our children. So while my story is a good story, and I'm very humbled to share it with you, and I also know that my grandfather would be so proud to see all of us together in this room talking, it is one of many great stories that many of you in this room have as well. I stand here today no different than any other educator, parent, leader, or advocate with the firm belief that what we do matters. My hope is that each one of you find your important priorities, hold true to the visions that they express, believe in them, fight for them, advocate for them, and make them count, because we all matter, and who we are is the difference in the world. Thank you.